Hi, folks. Try to get make sure I have all the technology going the way I'm supposed to here. Can you hear me? I see a couple of faces up. Can you just give me a thumb? Okay, so that looks good. And can you also see me? It's bonus
Yes.
night. It's bonus night. You get to see me. Okay. Hello. Hi, Ann. Um, yes, I guess most folks are muted right now. Okay. So, in deference to everyone being here on time, I like to get started on time. And the only caveat really is, as you probably noticed, you were in a waiting room for a little while. And so, as other people come in, I will have to admit them, but I don't think it will disrupt anything. And if it does, my apologies. Well, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are. My name is Steve Getterman. It's truly an honor for me, for you to be here tonight for part one of Age as Our Ally. And we're going to get into things very, very quickly, again, in deference to your time. Tonight's program should be about 45 minutes or so and organized into three parts, but I do often digress, so please don't hold me to it. But in any case, that's my plan for now. So I do have a bit of a plan, which is kind of nice. Um, so with that said, guess we'll just get on with it. It's been a few months since I've done a Zoom presentation, so I've got to knock off the Zoom rust, but I think we'll be okay. Things seem to be working better than usual. So I'll start off with a little self intro, which seems to be, kind of the protocol for things like this until we get to know each other, and that won't take long. And if you care to give any information about yourself, you can please add that to the general chat. And if you care to include why you were interested in learning more about Age as Our Ally, that would be great too. Okay, so you can just put that in the general chat. Then after our intro, we'll cover the number one way science says to offset cognitive decline. And I tend to agree with science on this one. We'll also get into a little brain science and show how the impacts and how that impacts how we play the game of life. The game of life is one of my favorite topics. So, in addition to brain science, I frequently bring in a little heart math science to these discussions. I do this because of my heart math certification training in stress, anxiety, and emotional management. And that seems to tie in very, very nicely with a lot of the things that in which people are interested. And I find the heart math techniques to be very effective in helping people maintain overall well-being. And heartmath.org is a nonprofit organization. This is not a promotional spot for them, just give you a little background. And its mission is to help people bring their physical, mental, and emotional systems into balance, aligned with the heart's intuitive guidance. And this is important at every age. So it's not like, you got to be over 50 to appreciate this. And then there's another branch, which is heartmath.com. And that's its technology branch, which also does research. So I'm going to check real quickly and see if there's anybody that I need to admit. It looks like everybody is still okay. So, all right, we'll continue. So depending upon how this goes, I'm sure we'll have some time for Q&A. And I would also like to do a guided meditation with you, and that will put some of our discussion into practice and focus. That's why I call this a training. So you'll begin to refine your skills right away. So if you have any questions, please send them directly to me in the chat rather than the general chat. So if you want to put something in the general chat, like I said, in terms of why you're interested in this, that would be great. But for specific questions, please direct those specifically to me, Steve, or Getterman. I don't know if you need both names or not. And that gives me a better chance of being able to see your questions. But don't worry if you chat in the wrong place. So a little bit of intro. My real work in studying and experiencing what is often called the human potential began soon after I moved to Ashland, Oregon in 1979. And it was there and about then that I met a Lakota by the name of Wallace Black Elk. And Wallace was leading sweat lodges in the area at the time. He was also working with Southern Oregon State College, which is now Southern Oregon State University. Wallace was an amazing man, spiritual teacher, great human being, a World War II decorated combat veteran. He also had to fight he also had to fight to share his ways with people outside the Lakota culture. So in other words, some Native people really didn't like the fact that Wallace opened his ceremonies to everybody. So Wallace basically said, my ways are not Indian ways. If they were, all Indians would be doing them, but they're not. And he said, I am an earthman. My ways are earthman ways. And that just really resonated with me, his openness. And so thanks to Wallace, I began to learn about his earthman ways by participating in his ceremonies. So around the time that I met Wallace, excuse me, I've got to admit another person here. About the time that I met Wallace in Oregon, in Ashland, Oregon, I also met another man by the name of Jack Schwartz. Some of you may be familiar with him. Jack was considered to be one of the most gifted and influential teachers of mind-body controls and intuitive skills in the world. And what really made him unique is that he was a Westerner. He was from Holland. And all the people that were being studied at the time were, yogis and Eastern mystics and things like that. So it kind of blew away Western science that one of their own was demonstrating a lot of these abilities. So Jack was the subject of many studies conducted by major research centers around the globe. And in the US, those included the Menninger Foundation in Topeka, Kansas, and the Stanford Research Institute, which I believe is in California. So I worked and studied with Jack for several years in Ashland, and we collaborated on one of his later books titled It's Not What You Eat, But What Eats You. And during that time, I was also a freelance writer, yoga instructor, a bartender, bouncer, and co-owner of a kickboxing studio. So although I swear I did not get hit in the head that often, I made several major questionable decisions. So in 1989, I voluntarily left Oregon. I wasn't asked to leave. I left Oregon and moved to Montana, and Bozeman has been my home ever since. In time, I met another Lakota spiritual leader by the name of Jim Miller from Pine Ridge, South Dakota. His wife was going to school here at the time. And so through knowing him, I was reintroduced to American Indian ceremony. And in 2014, I met a man by the name of Don Oscar Mero Quesada, who is a Peruvian shaman. And through Don Oscar, I've experienced really new realities through non-ordinary reality. There's really no other way to say it. And the simple to complex practices he teaches keep generating new ideas, experiences, and understandings all the time. So of course, like everyone else, there have been challenges. So way back in the late 90s, in the span of a few months, the extremely profitable herbal manufacturing company of which I was general manager, it sold. And despite the new owner's promises to keep the company in Bozeman. They did not. So I lost my job, my rocky marriage crumbled, and the house went with it. During that same time, I broke my back on Valentine's Day in 1999. So yet that summer, I ran the 19.9-mile Bozeman Ridge Run, which is classified as one of the most technical trail runs in the U.S. So as one friend said, she said, "Oh, you're in so much pain with everything else that was going on with you. It didn't matter to throw in another technical trail run where you were at it." And it was, yeah, it was tough. Anyway, took a few years and a lot of work until I got into a positive place. So since 2002, I've had several educational positions at Montana State University. Whoops, excuse me, I think somebody else wants to come in. Okay. So I've had several educational positions at Montana State University. And now as an adjunct professor at Montana State, I teach students critical thinking and communication. I'm still, after all these years, I'm not sure if you can actually teach anybody critical thinking, but I try. Because people really, that's one thing people really have to learn on their own. So the rigors of working with college students continue to change and challenge, but so do the rewards of giving and receiving. So really, in other words, it's apparent that young people, and all of you probably realize this, need elder mentors to keep them, to help them transition into resilient adults capable of handling the uncertainties we all face. That's why the work I do with older adults is frequently laced with suggestions on working with young people because they need us. And you know, again, having so much experience, especially with college students, it's you know, it's obvious. They ask for, they're looking for good relationships, appropriate relationships with older adults. So I also do a bit of freelance writing. And years ago, believe it or not, I wrote the prize-winning screenplay comedy, and that I later turned into a book titled Julius the Fifth Warrior Pope, Vengeance in Vegas. And as I said, it is a comedy. In a more serious vein, I follow that with How to Get Even with the Universe by Getting Right with the World. And that book chronicles some of the experiences and lessons learned from my elder teachers and put me on a path of what I refer to as the path of the elder spirit. So that's how I like to, that's what I call it. And hopefully some of you have or will add a bit about you in the chat. Okay. So I'm just, has anybody, maybe I could check the chat and see if anybody's chatted. And if you haven't, that's okay. That's okay. Let's see, do we see anything? Oh, yes, Craig, thank you. I am recording. Did you hear that? Thank you so much. I usually, and I do, I have notes stacked all over the place. I've got prompts, but if I don't hear that little voice say, you know, you're recording, then I freak out. But yes, sir. Thank you very, very much. Hopefully hopefully the recording will be decent. So, but now let's get into why we are here, because you know, I promise you some stuff. I'm going to do my best to deliver. And first of all, science confirms that we can. We don't have to. It's our choice. We can get better with age because the brain is actually hardwired to help us make that happen. So aging need not be a drawn-out drop into incapacitation. Rather, it can be a mind-expanding takeoff as we access new potentials and realizations. There's a caveat, and that caveat is if we do certain things. So this training keys on some of those things. It's specifically designed, as I've mentioned, for people 50 and older, but I think, you know, likely anyone can benefit. And one of the reasons why I say this, and I'll probably mention this again, is already seeing some of my college students. And part of it is simply because they are in a, shall we say, a confined educational institution where many of them have already lost their creativity, and they almost admit it because they didn't get graded on it, and um, sometimes it has to be rekindled, and we're going to work on some of that tonight. So, in terms of, I'd like to hear from you. What do you think is the number one way science says to offset cognitive decline? Would you mind putting that in the chat if you wish? So, if you wish. So, what do you feel is the number one way to offset cognitive decline? See if we have anything. Exercise. Good to get to that. Thank you, Rebecca. Healthy eating. Yes, yes, yes. Learning new things. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, 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 yes. Being social. Excellent, excellent. Curiosity and engagement. Very good, Paula. Not that I'm grading anyone. Exploring new interest. Super, 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 super. Yes, yes, yes. So you're all, right on it. And the one thing I want to mention about exercise is in terms of in terms of, I want to say this right, and who knows if I'll say it exactly the way I want. Um, let's just say that the number one way to stay healthy is with a healthy lifestyle. Let's just kind of leave it general like that. But the number one way to offset cognitive decline is by having a growth mindset. So some of you who put in things, learning new things and things like that, yes, um, that all fits into it. But it's for lack of, actually, I think it's a pretty good category to have a growth mindset. And again, it goes back to some of my college students when I realized that, man, oh man, they're getting locked in already. We need to do something about that in some cases. And so years ago, psychologist Carol Dweck researched and described a simple but groundbreaking construct, and she called these mindsets, and basically identified two different mindsets, which will probably come as no surprise to you. And one is a growth mindset, and the other is the fixed mindset. And they shape how we approach learning, working, and success. And one, a growth mindset is based on the idea and theory that with dedication and hard work, people can learn and succeed. So individuals with a growth mindset believe they can improve their intelligence and talent with practice, hard work, and resilience. Well, people with a fixed mindset believe that intelligence and talent do not change. That is, either we are born with a talent for a particular subject or we aren't, and that talent is all we need to be successful. So Dweck found that the most successful people in the world from a variety of professions, including, if I remember correctly, sports, politics, music, science, of course, they have a growth mindset. The most successful ones do. The good news is that if we don't already have a growth mindset, we can cultivate one. And the type of mindset that predominates is likely on a scale with us, a fixed mindset in some places, a growth mindset in others, and variations all the way around. So in other words, whether we have a growth or a fixed mindset kind of depends on what we're talking about. And for a sustained perseverance, the research shows a growth mindset is indispensable. So fortunately, as I said, it can be learned. Now, yep, we have all of us do have natural talents in certain subjects and skills. However, under the right learning conditions and with varying degrees of effort, we can learn almost anything. I wish I'd have known this back in college because I really didn't think there were certain things, such as physics, that I didn't think I could learn. I just need a little more help. People have, people have learned almost anything for centuries, and we are more likely to overcome an obstacle if we minimize this kind of thinking and maximize our attention to learning, and also key on how we learn. And that's one of the big things, to really, really understand ourselves and how is it that we learn. Of course, most people learn by doing. No, but then you need a good mentor to show you really, how to do. So I'm going to see if I'm going to take a chance here and try and share a really basic table on the growth mindset and fixed mindset. And this will be good. Did I have myself muted for a little while? Okay. How long was I muted? 3 minutes? Uh-oh. Okay. Well, sorry about that. Must have hit something. Okay, so I'm trying to share my screen. This is not the part that I want to share. Get all this stuff out of the way. See if this comes up. Should come up. There it is. Can you see me and can you hear me? Okay. Super. Maybe this is what happened during the 18 minutes of the Nixon tapes. Boy, that really goes back a long, long way, doesn't it? Okay, so here's some things on the growth mindset and fixed mindset. Really, really basic. The growth mindset is all positive. I can learn to do almost anything. I like to try new things. Effort and attitude impact my abilities, which is totally different from a fixed mindset. Feedback is constructive and helpful, which again can be difficult for some people. And I've certainly had times when I resented feedback. When I fail, maybe it is fault. When I fail, I learn. And when I fail, I'm no good. And failure is such a big thing. Again, with my college students, it's amazing how much I mean, to most of them, if they don't get an A, they're failing. And I think part of that is because of grade inflation. I like when people recognize that I try hard. And I like when people recognize that I'm smart. This last one, I like when people recognize that I try hard. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it really doesn't matter to me, but me personally. But a growth mindset addresses the isolation issues of many older adults. That's one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up. And so recommendation is to share the growth mindset with young people. Okay. Whew. See, it seems like I have a new message here. You are on mute. Oh gosh. Okay. Sorry, Anne, but thank you. So I'm still learning all this. I must have hit something. So anyway, staying on task. Let's get into some of these specifics here. So again, with the fixed mindset how do we get over it? There's a 4-step process to change it from being fixed to a growth mindset. So learn to hear when our fixed mindset is talking to us. Notice when we say to ourselves or out loud statements that reveal a fixed mindset, which is kind of like that chart I just showed you, and recognize that we have a choice. How we react to challenges and criticism is our choice. Our instinct might lead us to a snap reaction to a challenge or criticism, but sometimes if we just chill a little bit, we can change our thinking and see what's relevant and what isn't relevant. Okay, I mean, not all criticism is accurate. So take the growth mindset action. So keep in mind that that action is the key. So once we voice the growth mindset, then make the growth mindset choice, okay, then we act on it. And the big part about acting upon it is accepting risks, to accept challenges, which then means to ask for help when we need it, even when we're older, and to focus on the learning process. Okay, and that process partly relates on knowing how you learn and accept criticism as an opportunity to improve. The fourth one is then, look for opportunities to practice a growth mindset. And this was kind of suggested in some of the comments that people wrote already about the number one thing to mitigate cognitive decline. So if you find a strategy that seems difficult and you catch yourself thinking, oh, that would never work for me, try to change your thinking to, I could try it. And the meditative practice that I have for us tonight, I kind of designed it a little bit to, I don't know, well, challenge would probably be a little bit different than maybe other guided practices that you've done. That's all. So, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Checking on our time here. I think we're still okay. So anyway, when the researchers scanned the brains of people tackling tasks too difficult for them, she found a substantial difference in reactions between fixed and growth mindsetters. And I find this absolutely fascinating. So when faced with a hard problem, the brains of fixed mindsetters showed a total lack of activity, as if their mindset was filtering out all incoming information. When fixed mindsetters made an error, they tend to dwell on it. So this wrecks their ability to keep their focus in the here and now. And since they believe talent is innate, they didn't believe they could solve the problem. So as a result, their brains didn't bother expending energy to try to solve the problem. It quite literally didn't register. So on the flip side, as you can imagine, when faced with a difficult challenge, the brains of growth mindsetters showed a lot of fireworks. Their whole brain just lit up and stayed that way with significant results. So keep in mind, this is why it's mitigating cognitive decline. The growth mindsetters worked harder, longer, and smarter. They deployed a much wider range of problem-solving strategies when faced with complicated challenges and took actions to keep the flow growing. So the thing is that a growth mindset opens us up to possibilities. So saying yes to new possibilities is really what protects us from cognitive decline. Saying yes to new possibilities. Live and learn, and more life is the result. So the critical question is, how do we cultivate a growth mindset? So the very first step, I want to ask you to go in the chat because I'm kind of watching our time now. The very first step is curiosity. Just checking to see if there's anybody else waiting. I don't think so. Okay. So if we're asking questions and learning, it's hard to tell ourselves that learning and growing are not possible. And once we know we can learn, that we can teach an old dog new tricks, and some of the studies even show that it's easier to teach an old dog, meaning us or me, a new trick than a young dog, meaning maybe some of you. Um, we become curious about what else we can learn, and suddenly we're deploying our growth mindset on a regular basis and for maximum benefit. So generally speaking, curiosity is much more important than IQ. So IQ is definitely important. It does not necessarily push us out of our comfort zone. This is the key. Curiosity pushes us out of our comfort zone, at least a lot more often than IQ does. Now, part of this is a little bit of brain science here, which I quasi-promised you, and I'm not going to get into it too deep. But the release and interplay of what I call reward hormones is amazing. We almost need a chart to display them all, but it's not necessary at this point. But biologically, we are rewarded for learning new things. And again, you probably know that this. It's a survival adaptation. So curiosity, but this is why we're keying on curiosity, is that curiosity is neurochemically underpinned by a little bit of norepinephrine and dopamine. These are reward hormones. But the thing is that while curiosity is a potent driver, it's also a foundational ingredient for passion, which is an even bigger driver. So what this means is that curiosity by itself is not enough to create true passion. And again, it's kind of, you probably realize this if if you thought about this at all or thinking about it now. I mean, it makes sense that curiosity by itself is not enough to create that really, really true, vibrant passion. And the reason being, there's just not enough neurobiological chemistry being produced for the motivation required. Passion requires motivation. But back to curiosity, curiosity also helps with pattern recognition, which is what the brain does on a very basic level. Think of it as linking new ideas together. It's the fundamental job of most of our neurons. So as a result, whenever we recognize a pattern, the brain rewards us with this tiny little squirt of dopamine. Okay? And dopamine feels good. It's also a powerful focusing drug. So we recognize a pattern, we get a shot of dopamine, feels good, and all of a sudden we're more focused because things are feeling good, and it helps us target on the task at hand. And so we're excited and engaged, and it also it also decreases distraction, and that helps us to detect more patterns. So there's a feedback loop going on. If you've ever done a crossword puzzle or played Sudoku, the little rush of pleasure we get when we fill in the correct answer, that's dopamine. I'm pretty bad at crossword puzzles. Well, there we go. That was a fixed mindset. I don't do them very often. But the last one that I did, which is probably a couple of years ago, I got in this little pattern. I got, some correct answers and was getting a shot of dopamine, which is kind of cool because I was waiting for pizza, which probably also was getting me a shot of dopamine. But anyway, the reason we tend to fill in multiple answers in a row is that dopamine is tweaking the signal to help us detect even more patterns. And this is why one good idea often leads to the next good idea, and the next good idea, and the next good idea. And finally, dopamine amplifies memory. Okay, so this is also very important. The more neurochemicals that show up during an experience, the more likely that experience will move from short-term holding into long-term storage. So, what just keeps us from being curious and hopping to thing without going deeply into it? kind of already alluded to it before, is that through our curiosity, we find our passion or passions. And it's living with passion that stacks even more firepower into our neurochemistry and biology and keeps us humming, thriving, and living. Okay, let me just see how's everybody doing here. Everybody doing okay? Paula, you all right? Okay, okay, okay. Keep going on here a little bit. Um, okay, thanks, Leah. Um, so for now, with us in daily life, the goal is to feed those curiosities a bit at a time, and if possible, to do it daily. So it's this slow growth strategy. It takes advantage of the brain's inherent learning ability. When we advance our knowledge a bit at a time, we give our adaptive unconscious a chance to process that information. This is extremely important. So learning and pattern recognition find connections between curiosities, okay? Connections between curiosities that make us even more curious, which is how we cultivate passion. Evolution shaped the brain to enable survival, but evolution itself is driven forward by available resources. And this is like so appropriate for today. Scarcity of resources has always been the biggest threat to human survival, actually to the survival of anything. So scarcity of resources is the largest driver of evolution. And there are only two possible responses to this threat, especially for humans. We can fight over dwindling resources, or we can explore. We can get creative, innovative, cooperative, and make new resources. And this is why having a growth mindset is so important on a personal and collective levels. So what I'm going to show you right now, hopefully I've trained myself, I'm going to display what are referred to as the 8 intelligences. Okay, and you're probably familiar with these, but I'm going to do this little chart. Find this again. The 8. It's working. Okay. Can you see these? Super. Okay, so these are what are referred to as the 8 intelligences. I'm not sure when this first was created. It's kind of like us, it's kind of evolved over the years. And first there were maybe, 4 and 6 and now 8. So and I can give this to you, later, but you'll also have the recording. But when it comes to doing our guided practice tonight, I'm going to ask you to pick one of these to stimulate your curiosity. So you've got the naturalist who wants to understand living things and understand nature. Spatial, which is visualizing the world in 3D. Okay, that's another intelligence. The body kinesthetic, coordinating your mind with your body, how you move. Okay, musical, of course. Linguistic, finding the right words. Interpersonal, which is extremely important. Okay, your relationship with self is what that means. And then interpersonal, sensing people's feelings and motives, and also, like where they are with stuff, so there's to me there's more to it than that, but this is just a summary. And then of course the logical, mathematical, of quantifying things, making hypotheses and proving them. Okay, so those are recognized as the 8 intelligences. So I think I'll stop sharing right now. And see how we're doing on time. So I think what I would like to do, since we're going to be using the 8 intelligences in our meditation and or guided practice, whatever we want to call it, and we're already at 5:40. I'm just going to stop here first and just see if anybody has any questions. And you can type them in the chat, maybe directly to me, or maybe just in the chat, so that make sure that I find them. And if there are no questions, we'll just move right along. Give you a moment here. How did I do that? Okay. I don't see any. Okay. Has this at least been somewhat of interest to you and hit what it is that you were hoping we would hit? Or am I swinging and missing? Any comments on that? Okay. Well, I see a couple thumbs. I don't see anybody giving me the bird, so I guess we're okay. All right. So I do want to be respectful to your time. And this practice is going to maybe take 15 minutes or so. So I'll get let's just get started with that. So, especially since the 8 intelligences are maybe somewhat still fresh, and I can repeat those again. So I have a script for this, so I wanna get to this script. So the purpose of this meditation, and you can't do any of this wrong, it's designed to give you a chance to start going beyond the obvious, to where our curiosities and maybe even our passions lie. So, kind of going into the unknown a bit. That's kind of the intent. So first, you've got the 8 intelligences, and I would just like for you to pick one for now. Okay. So just pick one. There was the naturalist, there was the music, the interpersonal, language, logical and mathematical, kinesthetic. I'm probably missing one or two. You might have that. So just pick one, okay? And don't worry, you can't do any of this wrong, but just pick a general intelligence right now that you're curious about. And so I want you to either imagine yourself being the actor in this meditation, in which case you're actually projecting and seeing yourself engaging in this action, or you can watch another, excuse me, let me back that up. See yourself as the actor in the meditation where you're actually doing the actions yourself, or you can pretend, or you can watch another image of yourself doing the actions, or you can go back and forth. And that's frequently how my meditations work, is that sometimes I'm kind of in it, and sometimes I'm watching myself. I seem to dream the same way. So anyway, again, you can't do it wrong. So to get in the mood, we'll do a few full body autogenics. These are self-generated commands you will give to yourself so you can completely trust yourself about what you will say. Now, I'm going to say them, so I guess you're going to have to trust me a little bit, but then you can say them silently to yourself. And the key is to really, really feel into these autogenics, these self-generated commands, as much as possible to amplify your focus and presence. So for now, please, just close your eyes and get comfortable. And if you want to turn your camera off, go ahead and do that if you wish. You don't have to. And just get comfy with your back straight, but relaxed. Feet on the floor, unless you're sitting in a cross-legged position, and that's okay. As long as you're comfortable, hands in your lap in whatever position you need to be comfortable, or wherever you need for them to be comfortable and connected, still feeling connected, alert, and engaged. Now silently repeat these autogenic phrases to yourself. So use voice inflection to enhance the feeling, which is what I'm going to do. So I will say them, each one once, and then you can repeat it to yourself so you are hearing your own voice. Okay? So eyes closed, please. Only because this will work better for you, I think. And of course, if you want to have them open, you can. And we will begin. My forehead is cool. My arms and legs are heavy and warm. My solar plexus is warm. My heartbeat is calm and easy. Breath and energy flow through me. I am mentally alert and spiritually awake. I am at peace. I am at peace. Forehead cool. Arms, legs heavy and warm. Solar plexus warm. Heartbeat calm and easy. Breath and energy flow. Mentally alert, spiritually awake. At peace. At peace. Now feel into one of the 8 intelligences: naturalist, spatial, musical, body kinesthetic, linguistic, interpersonal, logical, mathematical, interpersonal. With your eyes closed, perceive a door in front of you that represents the intelligence you wish to explore. Notice anything about the door that you want. Now imagine yourself opening it. Walk into the area beyond the door and close the door behind you. Look around at this new scene that represents the intelligence you wish to explore. You can always brighten the scene by intentionally making it brighter. Perceive yourself without expectation, exploring new possibility in a new area of interest. Be curious, have fun, get excited, look around, pick stuff up if you want, turn stuff over. Allow something in the scene to attract your awareness. Interact with it any way you wish. What sense or senses does it stimulate? Allow curiosity or amazement to uncover your wonder, to deepen your absorption. Where does it take you? Does this experience uncover anything to you about yourself? If so, what? Do you feel you would like to explore and experience this more deeply? Just notice the answer without judgment. Find another object that attracts you and interact with it. Be curious. Have fun. Get excited. What is the attraction? Does this uncover anything to you about yourself? If so, what? Do you feel you would like to explore and experience this more deeply? Just notice the answer without judgment. For now, it's time to go. So thank the scene and whatever you found there for the experience. Walk back to the door, open it, and walk out. Look back at the door and notice if it has changed in any way. And realize you can go back anytime and explore more. Now allow the curious you to merge with the physical you sitting wherever you are at this place and time. So take a breath and integrate the two yous. Feel yourself come together, relaxed and alert. Thank yourself for anything that has been received. Take another breath, becoming more fully aware of where you are. And one more breath to become fully present. And when ready, slowly open your eyes. Okay. If you wish to turn cameras back on, you are welcome to. And if you want to unmute yourselves now, you are welcome to. Does anybody have any comments or questions or feedback? Anything else? Anything? Sometimes after doing these, people really don't feel like talking, but it didn't seem like we lost anybody. So that's good. I see a little smile there, Robin. You okay? Good.
Yeah, that was very nice. I could do that again, absolutely. With some of the other areas, I just did it in the one, but it was wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, folks. Well, we are right at an hour. So I do tend to frequently go over what I've said, but I'm just checking the chat, so I'm kind of going back and forth because I'm not sure if I get any notice of people chat. But if you want to say anything now, just unmute yourselves and we can go with that. Yeah, I'm sorry, was somebody saying something?
I would just say that for me, what struck me was looking back at the door again after leaving, and the idea of going back and exploring some more. For me, that's sometimes difficult. I just love it when I'm there, but going back is sometimes a challenge for me.
Could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
That means a kind of a commitment to discovering more and deeper, I think, rather than just a one-time thing. I just noticed that inside me that it's a challenge, even though I love doing it.
What's that?
Even though I love doing it.
Well, there's with so much of what we do, we look at like expanding the breadth of things, and so in some ways it's like exploring all these different things, with curiosity. And I'm not saying that this even addresses your comment, and I'm not necessarily trying to address your comment because it's yours. Just to make a point that we can broaden our experience and we can deepen our experience. And part of what I feel that we're trying to get into, especially as being elders, is to do both. And this is one of the things that I feel like is missing in our culture, to both go broad and deep. And it's our options, it's our choices to do whatever we want. And certainly if you like going into a door one time and you never want to go into it again, Craig, there's nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of doors to go through. Maybe one of these days you'll find one you do want to go back to. That'd be kind of cool.
Helpful, thank you.
Okay, folks. We're going to do this again tomorrow night. Not the very same thing, We'll go to part 2. I can't remember what that is right now. I probably have it written down here somewhere. Oh yeah, how to get out of your comfort zone and into the zone. So hopefully I will see you again, see all of you again. Well, some of you I haven't seen the first time. I just see your name up there. But in any case, hopefully you'll join us again, and the recordings will be available. And you should already have that Zoom link, but I will do what I did today and probably send it out a couple more times. And if there's ever any confusion, like not being able to, well, if there's any confusion, I don't check my emails when I'm on this, but like I will check it a few minutes before, and you can always email me at steve@elderspirit.com, and hopefully I'll get to it and we can take care of any problem. All right, my friends, thank you all so very much for your time and your participation. Feel free to email me if you've got anything that comes up between now and tomorrow, and I'll try to deal with it or respond to you if I can. Okay? Thank you. Have a wonderful night.